So now, what are we going to do is the following. Everyone who wants to make a question, please raise his or her hand, identify himself or herself, and we're going to collect two or three questions, and then Professor Das will answer them. Quick questions.
Very quick. Thank you, Mr. Das, for your saying. First of all, sorry for my poor English. So I wrote two very quick. I will talk very quick. The first one is in the book The Idea of India of Mr. Sunil Kilnani, quotes Lord Macaulay in 1835. Indian in color and blood, but English in tastes, in opinion, in morals, and in intellect. The question is, on a business perspective, what is the influence to be colonized by a nation that imposed its language, that now is the lingua franca, its legal system, and also, I believe, all the protocols and business systems that are hegemonic in the world? This is the first question. The second one is more provocative. Do you really believe that there is an opposition between government and business? If so, why there are in India, like you said, huge innovative economic groups like the Centenary and TCS Tata Group and the Ambani family groups? The true opposition is not between two breeds of businessmen, the old-fashioned and the new ones. Thank you.
Good. Anyone else? Norman, and then Norman, you go first.
Thank you. Yeah, this is on, yeah. Professor Das, for someone, I've been to India. I visited a friend of mine who was the chief secretary of West Bengal. He invited me to I arranged an interview in the Ministry of Health of West Bengal on a week of the day, a day of the week. It was a working day. The entire building was empty except the man who I'm supposed to see, and he was told to be there. 2 weeks ago in India, there was a blackout that deprived power to 670 million people. Our institute, we've just done a study of water in China, which is extremely serious. But I'm told that the water problem in India is even worse. That there's an overuse of groundwater, and the groundwater is receding as being poisoned. I mean, instead of India rising, I have the impression that India is sinking. I mean, what do you say to that? I mean, how much disorder can India take?
Final question in this round for gentleman behind me.
Professor Das.
Please identify yourself.
Yes. My name is Cristiano. I'm an economist for Banco Santander, the Spanish bank here in Brazil. And I found interesting that you said that the answer to India would be the middle class, probably the young people in the middle class with access to social media. And I remember just reading an article in The Economist. It was a curious article that compared the average age of rulers in the world with average age of population. And it was such a big difference for India, probably the biggest difference that you have in the world. So how do you see this type of information against what you said, sending youngsters from the middle class? Do they have the doors open, or do the rulers just shut the doors and rule among themselves and just avoid these people from ascending also to political power in India?
Right.
Okay. Well, first let me say I'm honored that you call me Professor Das, but I'm not a professor of any. I'm a writer, and I don't belong to any institution. And but now to the serious business of answering your questions. Macaulay, you started with Macaulay's quote, and yes, English does give us an advantage. There's no question about it. And certainly the rise of the outsourcing, software and business process outsourcing industry, which has probably been the engine of growth, is partly because of the advantage of the English language. It also helps us because we have 26 official languages. So that's not a very practical way to do things. And so it helps to have a link language. Now the link today, about 70% of the people understand Hindi. And Hindi could have been the official language of India. But there are parts of India where they would not like to be dominated by the Hindi-speaking people. So actually the country behaved in a very pragmatic, sensible way. Unlike Pakistan or Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka suffered because of the language problem, 30 years of civil war. And Pakistan broke up because of the language issue. When Pakistan became independent, Jinnah, the father of Pakistan, decreed Urdu to be the national language when only 7% of the people understood Urdu. And 56% of the people understood Bengali. And those 56% of the people told the Jinnah, allow us to teach Bengali in our schools. But he did not permit it, and so you got Bangladesh was created. So this is one of the sensible things. We have linguistic states in India, and who are quite independent, these linguistic states, somewhat like the federalism that you have in Brazil. However, I think Macaulay made one mistake, that India could speak English, but it would never be English. And so India always preserved its soul. And the last person who understood this was Mahatma Gandhi. And one of the reasons why we have this crisis of the rule of law and corruption, etc., is that we have never had a Gandhi who translated the ideas of the liberal ideas of the Constitution in terms of dharma. Very simple. And so it's a bit like Japan. Japan will never lose its soul. India will never lose its soul. They're too strong. Societies are much too strong. and so that is a sort of a quick answer, or long answer to your quick question. As regards the opposition between government and business, this is of a recent times. In India has risen on the back of two liberal institutions, democracy and capitalism. Both depend on freedom. And the historical past of India is that libertarian past. As I told you, the state was never an oppressive state. And so the merchant was always important in society. And the king was told, unlike China where the king owned the property of China, in India the king was told he only had a share, 1/6 was the share of the king. And that too was contingent on providing services. Anyway, you see, the opposition between government and business is a new idea which has come to us with Fabian socialism. But now it is there, and there is definitely, our problem now is that because there has not been enough reform, there is crony capitalism. And we need to do those reforms to get rid of crony capitalism and have in its place rule-based capitalism. Bengal and its unions, that's what you were talking about. And you talked about 670 million people suffering from a blackout. And you talked about the fact that you felt instead of India rising, India was sinking. And my answer to you is that yes, you can always, look at a glass of water and you can see the empty part or you can see the full part. I will just tell you that 25 years ago, India's per capita income was 1/4 of what it is today. 280 million people have risen out of poverty. 1% of the poor are rising out of poverty every year in India. Infrastructure, with all its weaknesses, is a serious problem, but it is far better than what we've had. With this bad infrastructure, bad governance, with an India that you think is sinking, it is the second fastest growing economy even today in the world. And so you can look at whatever you quoted is also correct, and whatever I'm quoting is also correct. The question is what you want to look at. In India we have a saying, anything you can say about it, the opposite is also true. Now we talk about the rule by old geriatrics versus the young middle class. True. Our politics, when I said to you that I think that when 50% of India's middle class, politics will change. I still believe that. I think these geriatrics, this is the last generation of these old people who have really done us a disservice. The last time we had politicians who we admired was in the 1940s and 50s. Ever since Indira Gandhi, it's been downhill for India.
Why is that?
Sorry?
Why?
Why do we have old men?
Why have you not generated new generations of politicians? It's a very interesting observation.
I think it's a very good question also. I'm not sure I have an answer. But I would just say that one of the problems we face is, in politics, we face the problem of family dynasties in politics. I don't know whether you have this problem in Brazil, but in India, every single political party is creating a dynasty, and the worst of all is the Jawaharlal Nehru's, Indira Gandhi's dynasty today. And I wish I knew an answer of how to get rid of those family dynasts. The only difference though is that these are not, Napoleon called the aristocracy of France hereditary asses, donkeys. The only difference is that in a democracy, at least every 5 years, you can change them. We bring them back, of course, in the next 5 years.
Maybe you should mention the rule within the public service that progress is based on seniority. I think this illustrates the point that it just...
One of the problems we have with our civil service, and I go every year to a civil service college to speak to the civil servants, and we have the entry level, the best and brightest come into the civil service. They don't go to the Tatas, they go to the civil service. So we are very lucky to have something like 100,000 people sit for the exam to choose 500-600. So it's a very tough to get in. But in 10 years they get destroyed. They get destroyed because And one of the reasons is democracy. The fact is, what democracy has brought, democracy has downsides too. What democracy has brought is the inability to promote people on merit. And so the safest course is to promote them by years of service. So if you get 7 years of service, you get rise to the next level. This is system of seniority. British didn't do that before 1947. They had the courage. Of course, they were not a democracy in India. They were imperial power. But they could. My father was a civil servant, and he superseded people all the time. But democracy has brought this problem of seniority, and it will take a strong leader, a Thatcher type leader, to undo this system.
Okay, one here, the other here. You go first, then from that. Identify yourself one more time.
My name is Eduardo Daros. I love confusion.
And please, and I know you love quick questions.
Now, I know that
You were
are going
famous
to
for
cut
that.
my word. You are famous for cutting the word. My word. Well, what you put a question, and you see you have too many people here did not answer. What is our code word? You remember that. And what is the Brazilian code word? I will dare to do it, and I will create a confusion. I think the code word in Brazil is that God is Brazilian. And being God being Brazilian, the difficulties and the unsolved problems which make our people suffer will be taken care by him. Now comes the problem. He doesn't come to solve our problems. So there are politicians who take his place as the protector of the poor. And since I was born in 1932, I always have a very good leader saying that he is the father of the poor. We have Getúlio Vargas. He lasted until the 54 when he committed suicide, reading a letter saying that the poor will not suffer anymore. He gave his blood for his people. Then afterwards, we had all kinds of leaders. And lately, we have a protector of the poor. So what happens is that the people do not think that the individual in Brazil has a power to change things. There must be somebody up level to solve that problem.
Very interesting.
Puchala, nice to see you again. When I got the invitation to come here, and the title of your speech, I was wondering that I could go to your country to speak about Brazil having the same title, that Brazil grows overnight, and probably using your quotes and examples about Brazil. So we are pretty similar countries, and you described it at the beginning, the bad side of the assets. My question is that I was reading today that Brazil stabilizes the birth rate at the level of 1.6%. And I believe that during this century, the most important assets beside education and healthcare are environment, food security, and energy. So Brazil is not only self-sufficient in those three aspects, but also one of the main exporters. And India is in the other side. How do you see your country by 2050 with those handicaps? And how do you compare to Brazil having those advantages?
Very good, profound question.
I would propose one more question, last one, and then we close. I'll do it. just a very quick one. You've talked about the state in general, but I presume there are differences between local states and the federal state in India. And maybe one of the reasons some states grow faster than others in India is on the different qualities of governments that varies from state to state. I want you to comment on that.
Very good. All three very good questions. Of course, God is Brazilian is a comment, so I shall not dare to contradict that. I think the points that Luis Furlan has made are very, very good ones. We are on the opposite sides. For us, low prices of commodities are good. For you, high prices of commodities are good. We are an importer of those. I'm a believer in technology and the ability of technology to solve problems of the world. Even energy, even food. And so Japan showed that and this is a lesson they taught us from 1960s, that a country need not be asset rich in commodities, but through use of brain power and other innovation, etc., it can manage. So there are many paths. The Indian model is not following any law. Most countries rose because of exports. The Industrial Revolution of every country after country in the West went through exports. India is doing it through the domestic market. Most countries did it through manufacturing. The rise of most countries. India is doing it through services. Most countries did it through investment. India is doing it through consumption. So it is disobeying all the laws of economics that we know. And so, my friend, I feel that these are very important issues that we have to be concerned with. But I personally think that inventiveness, as long as that inventiveness remains and is not crushed, there are many ways to produce wealth. And finally, the question on federalism. Yes, very, very good observation that frankly India is doing well. It may have been, it's got a weak center today. The central government in India is weak, but the state governments behave like presidential governments, many of them. And so the competition between the states for investment is what is driving the rapidly growing rate of growth. And frankly, the answer to the next leader of India is not going to come from the center or from these geriatric rulers that you were talking about. There are some young people coming up in the states who are showing governance, dynamism, and that may be the answer for the future.
Thank you so much.